Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you've had a productive week, and I wish you all a restful weekend ahead. Just a piece of housekeeping at the beginning of the episode. There may not be a video tomorrow. I will endeavor to get one out, but there may not be a video this weekend. If there isn't, I will see you back for regular episodes on Monday. Okay, now we need to begin today's video with the inflation numbers published today. This is the economic news analysts have been waiting for this week, with deflationary pressures being a deep concern for policymakers. Now, deflation has become politically sensitive, so we need to take some of these data with a grain of salt, but they are still worth noting. According to the data from the National Bureau of Statistics released today, China's consumer prices rose by a more than expected 0.5% in July from a year ago, boosted by a surge in pork prices. The 0.5% CPI increase in July was the highest since a 0.7% rise in February. Prices of pork, a widely consumed food staple in China, indeed China's most popular protein, surged by 20.4% year-on-year in July. However, core CPI, which strips out food and energy prices, rose by 0.4% year-on-year in July. That's down from 0.6% in June. How should we think about this? Well, this is still a very low rate in a country trying hard to raise consumption and prevent a deflationary spiral. But at least it is growth, giving policymakers a little room to maneuver. As we have seen in recent weeks, economists have widely expected low consumer inflation in China to persist through the year. However, there is more. The factory gate prices stayed in deflation, matching the decline seen in June. The producer price index fell 0.8% in July from a year earlier, marking a 22nd straight month of contraction. Economists have widely expected low consumer inflation in China to persist through the year. China is battling its longest streak of deflation since 1999, as weak consumption and investment demand lead to intense price wars in various sectors. Falling prices across the economy have resulted in weaker nominal gross domestic product growth, undermined companies' profits, and threatened to make consumers even more inclined to delay purchases because they expect costs to continue dropping. Reviving domestic demand is increasingly important as exports, a rare bright sign in the economy this year, unexpectedly slowed in July. We covered this, of course, in yesterday's video. Next up, the Olympics have almost come to an end. China has done very well in the medal tally, neck and neck with the United States for first in terms of total golds won, but also facing accusations of doping, especially with its swimming team. Now, YouTube takes down any video with even a few seconds of Olympics video, so we will just use footage in China as we cover these developments. We remember back in July, the US-based New York Times reported that 2 Chinese swimmers, one of whom is competing at the Paris Olympics, tested positive for an anabolic steroid, a banned performance-enhancing substance, in 2022, but were allowed to continue competing without sanctions after Chinese anti-doping authorities cleared them. Before that, a Times investigation revealed that 23 Chinese swimmers from the Tokyo Olympics in 2021 had tested positive for a banned substance, TMZ, at a training camp months before the Olympics. Chinese anti-doping officials determined that the positive findings resulted from contamination of food the swimmers ate and did not sanction or suspend any of the athletes. Beijing attributed the tests to hamburgers from a Beijing restaurant. This led to the US Congress at the beginning of this year's Olympics introducing a bill to put pressure on the International Anti-Doping Agency to be stricter with its policing or otherwise face funding cuts. In response to this, on Yesterday, China's anti-doping agency, ChinaDa, on Thursday urged the International Testing Agency, ITA, to intensify testing of US track and field athletes after American sprinter Ethn tested positive for the banned substance Trenbolone. ChinaDa accused the US anti-doping agency earlier this week of double standards, saying its US counterpart had been, quote, trying its best, end quote, to clear US athletes while accusing ChinaDa and the World Anti-Doping Agency of cover-ups. Ethn tested positive for the substance this year, but an arbiter found that the result was likely caused by contaminated meat. China Da said in a statement on its WeChat account, quote, "In light of the above, we strongly call on the International Testing Agency to intensify testing on the US track and field athletes. We also strongly recommend that the Athletics Integrity Unit strengthen anti-doping supervision of the US track and field, prevent the doping risks and strictly investigate relevant cases in an endeavor to truly protect the legitimate rights and interests of the clean athletes around the world and to rebuild the trust of global athletes in fair play," end quote. Meanwhile, Beijing is cracking down on so-called aggressive fans and celebrity worship. In recent days, state media reports have called out inappropriate behavior, such as fans booing during events or accusing referees of being unfair. Some commentators have called the issue China's Olympic shame. One especially notable incident, which caused a storm on Chinese social media, was when Chen Meng defeated teammate Sun Yingsha to win gold in the table tennis women's singles. Both are Chinese, but Sun was the favorite. The Chinese internet exploded with support for Sun and attacks on Chen. One Sun fan wrote that she, quote, "wishes Chen's tests positive for a banned substance, then the gold medal can go to Sun," end quote. The comment received thousands of likes. According to state media, social media platforms have collectively removed tens of thousands of posts and banned over 800 accounts for allegedly, quote, "spreading negativity and fomenting conflict," end quote, about this one table tennis event. State-run The Global Times has published several articles this week denouncing toxic fan culture in sports. One such article, called "Tackling Root Cause of Toxic Fan Culture," expressed, quote, "A 29-year-old woman surnamed He was detained by police for posting on Sina Weibo inflammatory as well as defamatory comments about Chinese athletes and coaches. Such toxic fan culture leads to selfish displays and negative behaviors that can harm the sports community and overshadow broader values such as patriotism and sportsmanship. The chaos in fan circles may appear to be the unconscious actions of individual fans, but behind the scenes there are often profit-driven manipulators disguised as fans. To gain traffic, seek business opportunities, and attract attention, some instigators exaggerate, fabricate, create something out of nothing, sow discord, and foster opposing sentiments. Ultimately, these actions, which harm the development of Chinese sports, are driven by the lure of profit," end quote. State-run Xinhua wrote on Wednesday, quote, "The fan culture not only affects the training and competition of Chinese athletes, but also seriously affects the reputation of Chinese sports," end quote. And the state-run Shanghai Daily published a commentary yesterday urging social media platforms to, quote, "enforce strict policies against malicious behaviors," end quote, and sporting organizations to, quote, "take a firm stance against fan mania," end quote. Meanwhile, Time magazine's Singapore team published a piece this week called "How China's Sense of Grievance at the Olympics Fuels Nationalist Celebrations." The piece explores the nationalist and ethno-nationalist elements of Chinese coverage and interactions with the Olympics. We will end today's video by examining some of the points made in the piece, which we're now quoting selected excerpts from directly. "For Chinese athletes who are watching back home, the Paris Olympics is not just the ultimate sporting competition. It's a stage for great power rivalry, with every Chinese success serving as evidence of faltering Western dominance. White superiority has collapsed," reads a popular post on Weibo after swimmer Pan Zhanle won gold in the men's 100-meter freestyle, breaking the world record he had previously set, and Zheng Qinwen became the first Chinese player to win gold in an Olympic tennis singles event. "Pan and Zheng have jointly dug the grave for white supremacy," the post declared, noting that swimming and tennis are typically the fortes of Europeans and Americans. "The 100-meter freestyle is like the crown jewel of swimming," wrote another Weibo user. "The world record has been broken by a yellow-skinned person, so they, Americans, are really stung by it." And when the Chinese swimming team broke the US 64-year reign over the men's 4x100-meter medley relay event on Sunday, nationalists saw it as further confirmation of the end of US domination across society. "Pan Zhanle came out of nowhere like Usain Bolt in the swimming pool and slapped Europeans and Americans in the face again and again," reads one of the top posts on Weibo celebrating the team's relay victory. As a side note, the Chinese term for Europeans and Americans can also be translated as the white race. The Weibo post continues, "How lucky that our generation can witness our country and race breaking the Western monopoly in various fields, economy, industry, technology, and sports." In keeping with a long-standing ethno-nationalist state narrative that frames China as a historical victim of an imperialist West due for its comeuppance, much of the Chinese public opinion expressed about the country's victories in Paris so far seems to focus on the foreign losers as much as the Chinese winners, with an emphasis on triumph over those who have aggrieved China, particularly the US. At the Paris Olympics, several incidents involving Chinese athletes, like tennis champion Zheng being criticized by rival Emma Navarro, a photographer accidentally breaking table tennis player Wang Chunxian's paddle, and another who had apparently shoved Wang, have all gone viral among Chinese social media users who are interpreting these as attempts to disrespect or sabotage China. This perceived dynamic has been most prominent in swimming events, where Chinese athletes have complained about being unfairly maligned by allegations related to doping scandals and being snubbed by unfriendly peers in Paris. Pan described his historic 100-meter freestyle win as avenging an insult, claiming that Australia's silver medalist, Kyle Chalmers, had blatantly ignored him when he tried to say hi before the race. Chalmers denies doing so and later said he had patched things up, and that the US team had splashed water at the Chinese coach. Observers have called the accusation dubious. "It felt like they were looking down on us," Pan said. His words went viral and were met with a wave of support on Chinese social media. "It's a world record set under their indignant gaze," wrote a Weibo user. "Pan Jianle used his actions to give them a tight slap," said another. As for the doping scandal, which a third of China's Olympic swimmers are embroiled in, the athletes have maintained their innocence, and their supporters are decrying the allegations as a smear campaign by the West. Wang Guan, a host for the state media China Global Television Network, wrote on Weibo that the Western sports sphere is trying to kill our reputation. With media coverage of the doping scandal, international outreach efforts also apply to sports, he said. "We cannot lose this narrative battle." Chinese social media users' general sense of grievance has even morphed into conspiracy theories that it's the US swimmers who are actually doping. China, which has invested heavily in athletic development, has already enjoyed decades of Olympic success, consistently ranking among the countries with the most gold medals, alongside the US and the UK. But even as Chinese athletes in Paris have made further strides in sports traditionally dominated by Westerners, a sense of the injustice and isolation they've been forced to overcome continues to loom over Olympic discourse. Some Western media have even been trying to depict China as a rigid authoritarian country with no freedom and fun, and that Chinese people are not cool at all, reads an article published this week in the Global Times. But Chinese Gen Z athletes tell the opposite story in Paris, breaking biases and lies circulating in the West. The Global Times added, "Here ends the direct quote and today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Friday. I hope to see you all tomorrow on Saturday. I hope you have a restful weekend, but if I do not see you on Saturday, I will see you all for a new week on Monday."